Excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to still have lots of people here in the room, especially when we look at the time and we know that you probably all have a long day behind you. So just to make this space more friendly and cozy, the first thing I'm going to ask you is to the people on the back to come and join us here to the front. Maybe a bit centralized, because also our dear panelists will be really excited to directly communicate with you. The alternative would be that I ask you to do a circle so that we can really talk to each other. So thank you. Welcome to our official side event, Ensuring NDC Successes, Connecting Global Renewable Energy Targets with Regional and National Ambitions. This is a joint side event, which we are doing from Renewable One side, together with RGI, the Renewable Grid Initiative, and RCREEE, the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Yes. So very happy to have you here. My name is Renadip. I'm the Executive Director of Renewable One, and I will facilitate this dialogue today. And even though we are here a bit in an formal setting, the idea is really to build on each other and have an exchange. So we're not in the negotiation room. We can completely disagree. We can agree. We can also interrupt each other friendly or build on each other friendly. So that's actually the tone I would like to set. It is very clear that COP28 has been groundbreaking with a global stocktake, with the commitments to tripling renewable energy capacities, doubling the energy efficiency, and now it comes to implementation, accelerated implementation. And what is also clear, so from this global target, there's then the question, how do we implement it at the national level? So this is one aspect. This will be the first panel we'll look at. The other part is when we are looking at renewable energy, it is very clear that we are also speaking about regional infrastructure, regional markets, regional collaboration. And so this would be the topic of the second panel, where we're looking specifically at the role of regional collaboration and regional organizations to make implementation happen. The idea is also to look specifically on developing emerging economies. The reality here is this is a challenge. Yes, renewables is happening, but there is a regional disconnect. So 18% basically of global renewable energy investment went into Africa, Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean, whereas 2/3 of the global population are living in these countries. So that's one aspect. We look into climate mitigation and adaptation, and we realize that renewable energy for adaptation is a bit like this little child that needs more attention, especially when we're speaking from developing countries. So very much looking forward to this part to discuss it with you. And actually, I think I'm going to, we're now here at COP29. We had announcement and pledges on the grids, on storage, on the green corridors, and a collaboration commitment on hydrogen. We really see that from the energy system side, there is broader infrastructure. And I think the objective here is also to see how these commitments on the broader infrastructure are really opportunities to build regional and national and global economies, industrial opportunities for stable and secure and prosperous lives. I will not go more into detail because we have Elena who will join me here. Sorry, Elena Stefanova, who is leading the IRENA Coalition for Action. And she will give us a keynote so that IRENA, as you all know, has been very, very engaged in making this tripling renewable energy target happen. And I think she's very well placed to give us insights on the developments, but also perspectives on the implementation on the NDCs. Thank you. Yeah, you know, we're going to try Yes. There is a presentation, so we're going to try to pull up some slides. Do you want to send it to us? Can you do that? Okay. So I think Elena is going to speak without slides now, but what we'll do is we'll share these slides in the follow-up because you have excellent analysis that is very interesting to share. So
okay, thanks, Rana. Actually, thanks. Good evening, everyone. It's the first entirely female panel I'm participating in. I'm very happy. So thank you very much for REN21 and Renewable Grid Initiative and RCREEE for bringing us together. I think that's a very relevant topic. We had the last year commitments. We heard this year commitments are also brave, but we need to make sure that we go and implement this into an actionable plan now. So analysis of IRENA in the NDC shows that it's the most renewable energy is the most frequently mentioned strategy in the country's NDC, and the countries recognize the potential for renewables to mitigate emissions, but also stimulate objectives around energy security, social, economic development, and industrialization. Last year, we're very happy to witness record high new additions into renewable energy capacity. We had 473 gigawatts of new installed capacity, which is 86% of the total installed new capacity was coming from renewables, which is a record that we didn't have so far. But still, we have now currently 3.9 terawatts of installed capacity. We need to go to 11 terawatts by the end of 2030. So it's still a way to go. Fortunately, we see that renewables capacity are growing up at speed, and actually this is we assume that it's also a result of the commitment the governments made and the signals they sent to the investors. But looking into the national development into the NDCs, we see that the countries so far have set only 5.4 terawatts in the NDCs. The energy plans are a bit more ambitious, but still we believe that there are sufficient efforts that need to be taken in order to get to the 11 terawatts. And after almost a decade after the Paris Agreement has been signed, the ambitions is still falling short. So we encourage all the countries to reconsider their plans and to see the full potential of renewable energy. With only 6 years remaining for the implementation, such commitments need to be accompanied with immediate and effective actions on the ground. So this also would require the renewable energy targets in the NDCs to be aligned with the national energy plans and the legislation. And also we expect more braver actions from the highly emitting countries. So particularly those coming from the G20, because there we see the largest gap between ambition and action. We call them to action to raise ambition, to align their policy and commitments, and continue set the pace for higher renewable penetration. In the meantime, many developing countries, particularly those in Africa, have very ambitious renewable plans as well in their own context, and we aim to support the electrification and energy access because we still have 685 million people without energy access. And achieving these goals would require for those countries substantial financial and technical support from the international community. The African continent, for instance, is currently planning to quadruple renewable energy capacity by 2030 with and achieve more than 250 gigawatts of installed capacity. But this, on the other hand, would require substantial financing. We calculate that $300 billion, mostly in the forms of international finance, must flow into the continent. Likewise, LDCs, especially in Africa, those countries that have the negligible share of the global emissions are the most vulnerable to climate change due to their geographical location, but also economic structure and limited capability to adapt to climate changes. So almost all these countries have also set ambitious targets. And for the period between 2023 and 2030, they are however, their targets are quite ambitious, but the financing they're getting is currently less than 1%. And finally, at the end of the emission spectrum, we have the small island developing states. They have the smallest contribution to the emissions, less than 1%, and also they make a small percentage of the new additions of global emissions. Yet they are increasingly capitalizing on their renewable potential. Some of those countries have already set ambitious 100% scenarios until 2030. So we are very proud to witness and see that they're already integrating these renewable targets into their national development plans. So for the sets, the commitment they have made so far is 13 gigawatts by 2030. However, most of the targeted capacity is conditional on international financial support, but also technical assistance and technology transfer, capacity buildings, and other form of support. Therefore, Irene estimates that SIDS will need a minimum of 10.5 billion to meet their renewable energy targets and include them in the NDC. In this context in mind, I would like to touch on some important themes, including what we need to do for the next round of NDCs in 2025. The next round of NDCs must increase the ambition, but also include more measurable, specific, and actionable renewable energy targets that aligns on one hand with national policy, but also with the global pledge to triple the renewable capacity by 2030. Such targets are more likely to drive deployment, support national and regional global objectives around climate, but also energy security, reliability, and affordability. And we also expect that the targets go beyond the power sector. Currently, the focus is mostly on renewable energy, but we assume that we estimate that other sectors also need to decarbonize at the same speed and electrify the transport, the cooling and heating, and also put efforts in decarbonizing the building sector, because more than 50% of the emissions are coming from these end-use sectors. NDC and national energy plans need to be aligned with coherent policy measures as well. And what we also noticed is that the best result is achieved when the different ministries and agencies are talking together. So when the energy and the climate planning are integrated, that brings the best results. And I can give a few examples from our work. So Slovenia and Finland, for example, they're integrating their energy and climate planning, and the scenarios that the countries are developing are stepping on the same starting figures. Colombia Energy Ministry is taking part in the energy modeling of the NDCs, and the energy and the environmental delegation are here together at COP. And finally, Chile and Canada, climate laws and the national targets are already not assigned to one ministry only. They are they in the agenda of the entire government. So implementing of these plans is crucial, and if the projects are to be financed and built, stable policy and regulatory environment needs to be in place. Market incentives need to be sent on time. We have to build resilient supply chains and ensure access to financing. We have to redesign our market system, which has been designed for the fossil fuel system of the past, and put the permitting regime, the supporting policies in place at the place where they need it, and of course encourage the international support, the international collaboration. So I would like to end up with the 5 main enablers in energy transitions, which are policies and regulation, supply chains, skills and capacity, international collaboration, and one of the most important infrastructure development and modernization, plus financing. So in this regard, I would like to leave the discussion and I'm looking forward to an interesting and very insightful discussion of the experiences that our panelists are going to share. And yeah, thank you very much. Back to Rana.
Thank you very much, Elena. This was really great and setting the scene. I think what is clear is ambition is there, and we don't have an easy task. So I'm going to, there's a duplication, right? Okay, sorry. I'm going to invite the first panel here. To start with, we have online, and is Margalita online? Yes. Margalita Arabidze, Head of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Policy and Sustainable Development Department in the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development, Georgia. I don't know where we see you, Margalita, but
Hi, Nara, and good evening. It's me, Margalita.
You will come into our virtual room. So this is the new part of COP29. Hello, Margalita. So good to see you.
Glad to see you again, Rana. Thank you. Thank you. Hello,
Yeah.
Rana. Hello, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We have Sara Hernandez, Country Engagement Specialist from the NDC Partnership. Hello, Sara. Please join us here on the panel. Yes, we're just going to use this part, but I will walk around a bit to make the. Then we have with us from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, advisor to the Minister, Felipe Corral from Colombia. Felipe, please join us. So you will have noticed, I think, Elena, you mentioned we were an all-female panel, but Felipe is stepping in for his colleague who is in the negotiations and is like this, contributing to our better gender equality, right? Or equity, or how do you say, gender balance. Sorry. And we have Goksen Sahin, who is a senior advisor expert from ICLEI Europe. Because what we see is we speak about countries, but obviously the subnational government is really fundamental. So Margalita, you're online, so let me start with you. I would be really keen to hear how Georgia has actually integrated renewables and energy efficiency in their overall strategy, but what is happening on the link between energy and the NDCs? Which stakeholders have been most critical in this process? And yeah, maybe you can also already start to speak a bit about some of the opportunities and challenges. Thank you.
Okay, Rana, thank you so much, Rana, and good evening, everyone. And I hope in next meeting I will be in person and see you in person in the near future. Thank you so much and for your question, and Rana. And I think in the I can to introduce and the relevant information from my side and from the Georgian side. Ladies and gentlemen and estimated delegates, it's an honor to speak on integrating and renewable energy and energy efficiency into Georgia's and national determinant and contribution. The global energy and transition is crucial to our climate goals, and renewable energy and energy efficiency are its in the center. Today, I will highlight in the Georgia's in action in the area, focusing on how and we are aligning with the global and climate and strategies. Georgia is actively integrated in renewable energy and energy efficiency into its and climate strategy and through the comprehensive and legal and the policy and framework. Key steps and including, and the first, it's very important, is and legislative and the policy advances. I mean, in Georgia has enhanced the energy and efficiency law and amendments to the law on energy efficiency in the building, aligned it with the EU standards to reduce an energy demand and the promote and sustainable development, because as you are aware in the building issues, all energy intensity sector, it's very important because in the consumption of the energy is so high in this in this sector, including and building issues. Second, it's very important is renewable energy projects. And Georgia is developing is a hydropower potential and expanding in solar and wind energy, along with the developing as a green hydrogen strategy to become one of the regional leaders in the hydrogen production. Third, it's very important is in public and engagement because educational and institute initiatives and the certification programs have the trained and over 100 and renewable energy installers, ensuring a skilled and workforce and to meet and the growing demands in this sector. Next, it's very important is a commitment to transparency. Georgia will soon submit its fifth national communication and the first and the biannual and transparency report to the UNEP and Triple C, underscoring our commitments and to transparent and reporting. Additional measures including the green growth strategy, development with World Bank support and World Bank support, which aligns in economies and development with climate goals and attracts an international investment, modernizing energy infrastructure, including smart grids, enhancing energy security. Our just transition plan will ensure that and the vulnerable populations benefit from the renewable energy shift. It's worth and highlighting and that and the active involvement of different stakeholders, such as in public and private and the entities, academia and citizens and IFIs and NGOs and others, and play a very important and role for the successful implementation of any reforms. As regards the net COP29 and Georgia will and the reaffirm its climate and the commitments, aiming to increase the renewable energy share is the final consumption to 27.4% by 2030, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and by 47% and from 90 levels and limited final energy consumption to 5 megaton and in 2030. These targets and reflect Georgia's dedication and decarbonization and the sustainable growth. Because and as you are aware, and the all targets are very ambitious. It's critical important is and to develop and the very and the practical and the implementation about and the measures through and the this and actions and the Georgian demonstrators and that integrated and renewable and energy efficiency into and the national determined contributions is both and commitment and the reality driving and sustainable development. Let's ask and the continuing to collaborate and the share and best practice to accelerate the global energy transition. I will stop here, and it wasn't brief information from my side. And yeah, it's if you have a question, I'm ready for this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margalita. I just realized that indeed it is very difficult to make signs to move and have the dynamic here. Now, actually, I planned, and I'm just going to ask the tech, because my other in-person panelists are very far away from me. So I would actually want to move closer to you, but does the camera follow? Does it? So that Margalita, okay, it's not working. It is. Okay, please come closer. Thank you. Now, let's move from Georgia to Colombia. But I give you the time to sit with me. Thank you. Felipe, we have met with your colleagues and we actually learned about very exciting developments in Colombia. I think you have quite integrated plans. And what we found really interesting was also the integrated and cross-ministerial collaboration, but also this link between energy and climate, I guess, but not only. So it would be really great to hear a bit of your experience, the plans, and how you also make the link to the NDCs in the lead up to Belém.
Great. Thank you so much for having us, for inviting us. I know you were expecting Cristina, but I hope I can keep up the quality. So one of the things that makes the case of Colombia different than the usual renewable deployment story is that Colombia is a very fossil fuel dependent economy, mainly on coal and oil exports. And a lot of what we've been discussing with other ministries, the Ministry of Environment, Agriculture, amongst others, is that we have to think not only about an energy transition, but a productive transition beyond this fossil fuel dependence, and one that takes into account all the uses of land and deforestation and so on. And that has led us to create this more integrative socio-ecological transition approach that has been collectively built between the different ministries. And within that greater bet towards a transition, the just energy transition, of course, plays a protagonic role. What does it entail? First, it aims at the massive deployment of renewable energy sources, mainly solar and wind. We conducted all the energy system modeling and came to the conclusion that we need to increase from our currently 21 gigawatt of power capacity to almost 90 gigawatt by 2050. All of which is more or less that growth renewables, no? And we have a couple of enablers that are particular to our geography. Mainly that we have an ACE card in the hydropower system that we currently have. So currently 70% of our installed capacity is hydro, which acts as an existing battery that can absorb the intermittency in variable renewables. The second component of the strategy is based on enabling the transition of end uses of energy. So in the sense that we have a massive renewable rollout, we can enable the transition of the transport sector, the residential sector, and the industrial sector towards energy efficiency and electrification in line with the pledges that we committed to last year. And finally, and not least, is the opportunity to leverage all of this in order to pool investments into the manufacturing sector of induction cook stoves, efficient appliances, e-vehicles, e-buses. Currently, one big Chinese company is considering to establish its base in Colombia based on that. In order to have a shot at economic diversification that reduces our vulnerability towards fossil fuel phase out outside of Colombia, where most of our fossil fuels are directed. What are the challenges and the experiences so far? Of course, ministry coordination is never an easy task, and all the permitting processes in terms of environmental permitting and social licensing is not always smooth, but we have been able to deepen the collaboration amongst others in the rollout of renewables. So we have like an inter-ministry work group on deploying this 6 gigawatt that we have aimed to deploy until 2026. And a huge challenge is in terms of financing economic diversification, because it is so far not felt as directly and as importantly as other aspects of the transition. We see that in 10 to 15 years, a lot of our exports may decline in line with the demand reductions worldwide. And preemptively investing to diversify the economy is extremely hard to do under fiscal constraints that we are facing, and amongst many other priorities that the country must face. Currently, for example, we're in a situation of national disaster because of floodings that are, of course, also linked to climate change. 3 months ago, we were in a drought that was completely unexpected, and we were not counting on it. So implementing these transitions with the fiscal constraints that emerging economies, that developing economies face, without further support from outside, even with the best coordination between the ministries, is a very hard obstacle to face. I would stop there.
Thank you so much. I think I'll just build on the last point you said, because we clearly see we need to adapt to climate change now. And there is assessment that for $1, basically $1 will lead to $6 of avoided costs if we invest now. And according to World Bank, if we wait 10 more years and delay this, it will double actually the cost. So I do think that's really something that is not reflected in our economic system, right, and in our finance, and might be another lever. Let me turn to you, Sara. You're working for the NDC partnership, and you're accompanying many governments. So I would like to hear whether what you observe with the governments is similar to what we've heard, and probably also this part. We have this specific example of Colombia as a fossil fuel producing, exporting countries. Obviously, the transitions here are very different than when we're talking about countries that do not depend on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And the short answer is yes, we are seeing the same challenges across the country, but to expand a little bit more, let me start for those who may be not familiar about the NDC partnership. We are a global coalition. We are bringing together more than 230 members, including more than 130 countries, including developed and developing countries, and more than 100 institutions. How the partnership works is like the governments identify their NDC implementation priorities and the type of support they need to translate these needs into actionable policies and action, and we match this demand for support with our partners to create a package of support that is tailored to the country's need. So we are a matchmaker in one word. In our experience, actually, yes, the most common challenges are securing adequate finance, building technical capacity, and ensuring coordination across all sectors and level of the government, but not only of the government, but also coordination with the private sector and the civil society. And in this sense, I will expand a little bit more of the areas of coordination we are seeing, and you already mentioned some of them. The first one is obviously interministerial coordination, because it's necessary that the countries have clear role and responsibility and have a shared vision across their ministries. And the second is partner coordination. As my colleague mentioned, resources are so restricted. If the countries don't have a partner coordination in their countries, there could be efforts that are duplicated. They are not measuring where the money is going, what partner is supporting which ministry. So it's very important to have partner coordination inside the countries. And finally, have also a coordination among the civil society and the private sector that we call these have a whole of society coordination approach. And actually, the good news is, well, the bad news is like, yes, coordination is a problem for all the countries. Actually, 90% of the countries that are members of the partnership have requested support for stakeholder engagement or coordination mechanism. But the good news is like there is also a high level of response for partners. Right now, to give a number, around 70% more than 70% of the requests to support stakeholder engagement are supported by partners, and also those countries who requested support to create a mechanism of coordination among ministries, 80% of them have received any kind of support from our partners. So that's some of the points I wanted to make. But yes, as you see, this is across all the countries in the world. But the good news is, like, they are asking support for it, and they are getting it.
Thank you so much, Sara. I think this quite a shocking number, the 90% on multi-stakeholder engagement, when we know how much this actually allows to bring players on board and probably ultimately reduce permitting processes. I think at the city level, and Goksen, I'm turning to you. You're a senior advocacy expert from ICLEI at ICLEI Europe. What is your perspective from the municipal government level? How do municipal governments contribute to NDC implementation? And what are the challenges on the multi-level governance?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I will completely change my talking points, and I would like to respond to Felipe and Sara.
But you can also have your talking points.
But I think kind of they kind of paved the way for me to build on their talking points. So Felipe mentioned about kind of stretched public budgets and the fiscal frameworks, how difficult it is for the national government level to accelerate the transition. When you come to the subnational level, which means states, regions, cities, and the other subnational structures, you have even more stretched budgets, because some of the money is given back to the national government, and they need to accelerate the transition. They are, in most of the time, are a part of this permitting process, but they need to do it through an inclusive process, because when you have an energy infrastructure in your backyard and you're unhappy with it, the first kind of government level that you react to is the local level. So they need to do everything in an inclusive way. So they need to be involved in this decision-making processes. And I will also kind of build on Ilina's points. It's like we are talking about heating, we are talking about cooling, we are talking about the kind of the energy transition, the energy, the electricity we use. So these are all, I mean, before COP, there was the World Urban Forum in Egypt, which had the slogan of "It all starts at home." And basically, the energy transition, it all starts at home. And we need to build it from bottom up when we are thinking about it. So in that sense, local governments or subnational governments play an important role in creating enabling conditions and enabling conditions for an inclusive and fair transition. If, like all other government levels, if they have themselves the enabling conditions, meaning fiscal frameworks that enable them to, or they help them to redistribute the benefits of energy transition to citizens, and if they can also be a part of the planning process. For example, I will just share an example from Europe. In Europe, we have we have the mission for 100 climate neutral and smart cities. So we have 100 cities who are trying to become climate neutral by 2030, which is a very ambitious thing. And when you think about cities, we are talking about Stockholm, Athens, Paris, and so on. So huge challenge. And in Romania, for example, we have a similar interministerial board, which is coordinating together with the cities who are involved in this process, their transition, because if they transition, then Romania automatically kind of reduces its emissions drastically. So we have these examples, and we see that already multi-level and the whole of societal planning helps reduce emissions. So what is important in this NDC process is that last year, under the UAE presidency, we had this coalition for high ambition on multi-level partnerships, which is one of the initiatives that the presidency launched, which is and it's very interesting. It's a pledge from national governments to consult with their subnational levels when they are designing, implementing, and financing NDCs. So currently we have 74 countries who are supporting the CHAMP initiative. And also we have seen kind of last week, sorry, these are the days when you lose which week you are in at COP. Last week, Brazil published their new NDC, and it includes a commitment to climate federalism, which is a very strong commitment. So they say that their national mitigation strategy will provide guidelines for sectoral, but also subnational mitigation and climate action plans. They also kind of make a very strong commitment for the adaptation strategy to work through a multi-level and transversal collaboration. So this is basically, if we are talking about bringing everyone on board, I think we need to start talking about how we can start this process from bottom up, which will also help national governments to achieve their NDCs. So I think this is quite important. And on 20th of November, we will have the Urbanization Ministerial, where again, we hope that the environment, climate, and urbanization ministers will come together to talk on how they can untap this potential that their subnationals have to accelerate the transition.
Okay, thank you so much. This is really exciting. I'll just bring this directly back to you, Sara. What does what Goksen just shared mean for the NDC partnership work, and what are you specifically looking into this mobilization of municipal governments also at the subnational level? Yes.
Yes, actually, we are supporting also a lot of multi-level coordination. But I want to add that not only is important to have these stakeholders during the consultation period of developing the NDC or developing the long-term strategy, but actually government should embed a system of follow-up. Because what happened is, like, when the country develops, then the NDC, they are seated there. But what happened after that? When you are thinking about implementation, this mechanism disappeared. So what we are recommending right now is that this mechanism, if they are created when they are developing the NDC, for example, if they call for the local governments for their opinion on what they are developing, they should also continue and informing them about the development, asking constant feedback after they already have the document during implementation. So it's something that is we want to stress, and we are actually stressing about with local governments, but also with civil society, with the private sector, with all the stakeholders, that it should be not only one moment in time, but a continuous engagement.
Thank you. I'll turn to you, Felipe, because I understand that you had a quite intense mobilization and multi-stakeholder dialogues in Colombia. Would be interesting to hear your experiences and to what extent you also involved the subnational government level, citizens, cities.
So to produce this just energy transition roadmap, we have 27 different dialogues across the country. Almost all the regions of the country were covered, and we were able to engage with over 2,000 different actors in the process. Not all of them, of course, were satisfied with the results or the way that they were included in the final roadmap. So that's kind of one of the results you just have to learn to live with. But we kind of had very reasonable, good feedback on the results, and based on that, some of the different measures that have been or that have started their implementation since the roadmap was produced or launched in its first version last year, have try to take that interaction, that participation by the public into account and to implement it. I will give just two examples of that. One that directly involves municipalities is called Municipios y Territorios Energéticos, which mainly aims at developing small solar farms to provide municipalities with cheaper energy for their own consumption, but also as an opportunity to reduce the electricity prices for the local population. And the other is an article in our National Development Plan that enables transfers from larger energy projects in renewable-rich regions that have important indigenous and Afro-Colombian population, so that they transfer up to 6% of gross power sales to municipalities and these indigenous and Afro-Colombian populations in the area of influence of the projects. And this creates a completely new alternative for both fiscal diversification at local level, but also a very dedicated source of finance for this more localized transition. So these transfers are exclusively earmarked for energy access, for energy democratization measures at household and community level. And so far, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that at a local level, especially from municipalities that had been suffocated with high electricity prices in the past.
Thank you so much. I think this component you really have we often hear this participation in the economic benefits and the redistribution of economic benefits and matter, I think, a component of equity. Margalita, very, very short last statement for you. I know that in Georgia, there were lots of questions about societal support. How do you address this and bring this? Are you still online?
Yeah, I'm still online. Thank you, Rana. Rana, as you are aware, we created the relevant legal framework for stakeholders, including a non-government organization, because as you are aware already, we have the commitment about a public hearing and with the stakeholders. And that's why, and when we are talking about the policy documents like an NECP and the other regulations, for example, and this year we approved a very important document. It was an energy policy and energy and climate change integrated action plan and approved by the parliament. We had the 14 and the very important in the public hearing with the stakeholders, including a non-government organization and municipalities, social society, also in the commercial sector, and so on and so on. Of course, and here is some very important and challenges in this process, because sometimes the people don't know and why it's important renewable energy utilization, energy efficiency measures in globally, as you are aware, it is in more energy security, but also in more CO2 emission reduction projects. It is in the more very important and the environmental issues and the so on and so on. But sometimes the people don't know what is the commitment from the EU regulation and what will be and results and from these activities. That's why I think it's very important to speed up the cooperation with the stakeholders from the government side, because as I mentioned, and policies here and legal framework is here, of course, and the lack of information, it's a key challenge. That's I think, and the government's aim is to introduce more relevant activities with the stakeholders, and we'll start and more closely cooperation with them, because it is more critically important. It is, but of course, and it's not enough and needed more additional activities in the same field. I think, and also, if I have a time, and I would like to add, and we have the two very important activities in the government sector. First is the steering committee. Steering committee member are at least the deputy minister as a decision makers, and from the line ministries in Georgia it is around 11 and the ministries. As second, it's a working group. As regards to working group member, here are different entities and the difference and the position and experts. It's already we created, and from the government side it's very important and to have a close cooperation, because we have a chance to introduce and more policy decision in renewable energy and energy efficiency, because as I mentioned, in hydro power station. It is a main priority for us. Sometimes we are talking it is a traditional energy for us, of course, and plus and solar and the wind, but of course, and NGOs and the on the other and the stakeholders and need more information why is important and hydropower generation in Georgia. I will stop here. And the Rana, I think, and the more experience and from the from international donors and international organizations like and the REN 21, because Rana, as you are aware, we had very important in the cooperation and the few years ago it was in the kickoff meeting in the renewable energy. And I think and the similar activities and the cooperation and will continue will be very, very useful for the government side, because it was in the very high standards and we had a very important meeting with the stakeholders. I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Margalita, and thanks actually for giving me the opportunity to directly move to the next panel, which will be on regional integration, I think. Before doing so, please join me in applause for our panelists. I would like to thank you very much for sharing your insights. So the next discussion will be on regional collaboration to achieve national ambitions. I will like to ask Ahmed Jameel, climate policy expert from the Center for Environmental Policy and Faculty of Natural Science, Imperial College London, to join me here. Gloria Alvarenga, Director of Integration, Access and Energy Security from OLADE. Antonella Battaglini, Executive Director from the Renewables Grid Initiative, who is co-hosting this event. Hajar, I hope I pronounced this, Khamlichi, North Africa Director of Pooled Fund of International Energy, and Nadia, Chioukh, International Cooperation Communication Manager from RCREEE. Thank you very much for joining me here. And I think we looked into national experiences linked to the NDCs, but also subnational governments. Now, the reality is when we look at infrastructure, the regional cooperation is fundamental. We heard it also, it has been mentioned by some of the panelists before. I'll turn to you first, Antonella, actually. Because I think we have heard so much power is in the focus. Grids are important, and here at COP we had really these green corridors that are identified. When we are looking also at the MENA region, their interconnection is basically a topic in all regions. I would like to hear from you how you think that grids and renewable infrastructure can be integrated or need to be integrated into nationally determined contributions, in what regions, and how we do this best.
Thank you very much. So my name is Antonella Battaglini, and I'm leading an organization that is called Renewables Grid Initiative. It's basically is transmission system operators, environmental and climate NGOs. We have a very specific understanding of what the grid infrastructure is and why we need it. The question you ask is not easy to answer because the grid is an enabling factor. So we cannot treat it as a generation unit. And I really don't know whether this should or not be included in the NDC. For me, what would make much more sense is to include the demand side. Because if you include the demand side, the grid becomes a service to that demand and not just something in between. Today we have generation side, which is very much in the focus, but it is in the demand side that most of the opportunities lie. And this is a fundamental twist in the energy discussions, because instead of having this incremental approach of adjusting the generation side, we are going to look, or we should look, at how do we optimize a system, especially to serve demand. So I have not a better answer for you at the moment.
I think this is a perfect answer and would actually love to have everybody in the outside also hear this, because I think when we're in, and it echoes a part of, by moving from a fossil fuel economy to renewable economy, we actually also need to move from an energy supply to an energy service. So I think it's really interesting. Let me, and raises lots of foundational questions, I guess. So looking forward to discussion here on the panel. Ahmed, I'm going to turn to you. I would be keen to hear your view also on what Antonella has raised, but in general, an overview about global climate and energy targets and how these have helped to boost renewable energy ambition in the Middle East. Also acknowledging further fact that the socioeconomic and fossil fuel dependencies varies very much in the different countries in the region.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I pretty much agree with what Antonella have just said. I think the demand response as well is, along with the energy efficiency, is very important to build climate resilient infrastructure for energy systems. This is very important, actually. And answering your questions about the progress in our MENA, Middle East and North Africa region, I think we have witnessed this, especially in the very recent years. The demand and supply are increasing for renewable energy, mainly solar PV and wind. We know that our region is very, very rich with these resources. Also, we are very lucky, by the way, because one of the very important components is the supply and demand match for the grid stability. And we have this in our region. So at the time of high supply for solar, for example, like a summer daytime, we have at the same time the peak demand, which is for using, because it's hot areas and using air conditionings, etc. And this is also the case where I'm focused on in terms of academia, my previous work experience working for the government of Saudi Arabia and the Ministry of Energy. So I think we have a leverage on this, and we have also opportunities to move forward with regards to renewable energy, especially solar PV. In terms of really see the how we can quantify the impact of those targets, I think when we see the Saudi Arabia example, for example, back in 2020, so the installed capacity of solar PV was just around 3 megawatt of solar PV of just one project called Skaka. By end of this year, it's almost 44 gigawatt. And this is almost half of the current installed capacity of the UK, 90% of the installed capacity of Sweden, 100% of installed capacity in Austria and Switzerland, and also Malaysia individually. In terms of the future, how we see the future, for example, in Saudi Arabia, that number was announced, is that by 2030, which is the time frame of the NDC of the country, it has very ambitious target of having energy mix 50% of it supplied by renewables, is that we will reach around 130 gigawatt of renewables, mainly solar PV and wind power, with an assumption of adding, and that was actually the case of the last years, but from now till 2030, adding 20 gigawatt every year. And this is higher than the installed capacity added in Germany last year, which is 18 gigawatt, and almost half of the added capacity in the US, which is 44 gigawatt. So the momentum is there, the work is there. maybe I will go into other topics to discuss in the later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's we'll have another follow-up question because we heard the example of Colombia on that is clearly also phasing out the fossil fuel side. So that's actually an interesting discussion to also ask. Antonella, I saw before moving to the regional part, you waved. So I think you would like to add something.
Yes, I want to clarify that when I talk about the demand side, I'm not speaking about demand response. I'm speaking about consumption. So if we would set clear targets of consuming renewable energy, this would be a real shift, because we add generation renewable. You have very impressive figures, but we need to consume this. We need the market. And if we start planning the system from increasing consumption rate, that is a big game changer.
Thank you. Let's now move to regional views on this. I'll start with you, Gloria. OLADE as the regional organization, what are the engagements on renewable energy efficiency? What is the topic on grids, and how do you look at energy consuming sectors?
Okay, thank you very much. For those who do not know about OLADE, OLADE is an international organization with an intergovernmental nature. We have 27 member countries in the Latin American and the Caribbean region, and we constantly in communication to most of the main organizations that are working in the development energy sector. Through 51 years, we have 51 years of existence. We have made the synergies and we have to make the best efficient use of the resources that different organizations at their disposal. In Latin America and the Caribbean region has been a great beneficiary from external cooperation too, as a technical assistance, channel such as IDB, World Bank, the International Energy Agency, the European Union, all of the stakeholders and the organization have helped to do the goals. It is a key aspect that OLADE brings to the table dealing with an international organization. It's being an intergovernmental organization that we have 27 member countries, and it's important that external cooperation, expertise, founding, and understand that nations' use and socioeconomic developments are resources. This potential alliance themselves to specific objectives and specific target that we have. And also this applies to energy transition. There is not only one path or a single target to go, multiple paths, and we share the common interest. But we are fine against climate change, and we will want to lead our region to this transition, and it's our job to help the governments to do it. Finally, I just want to point some key points that we can build strong regional collaboration if we must have a synergy together now. First of all, developing of the standardized energy policies and regulation across the region will facilitate that investment. Second of all, building this interconnected power grid and gas pipelines across countries will enable energy sharing and reduce the dependency of the important fossil fuels that we have already. Collaborating funding and ensures research initiatives that we have can advance energy technologies, particularly in biofuels, solar, and wind energy. Also, pulling financial resources through regional development banks or creating a share fund for renewable energy projects could improve the access to the financing and reduce the risk of the investors. And last but not least, developing a regional network to train energy sector professionals, share best practices and technological expertise is essential for us to be done.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Let's directly move into another region. Nadia, what is the situation in the MENA region? I think there has been just a recent announcement on the 1 terawatt goal, right? So if you could share some perspectives.
Hello. Thank you. This is Nadia Chioukh. I'm representing the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and I'm pleased to talk about the MENA region. So when we talk about the development and the implementation of the NDCs in the Arab and the Mediterranean region, what we call the MENA region, we need first to consider the economic context. So the economic contexts are diverse, and the priorities of the countries as well, they are also different. So regarding the energy transition policies and regarding adaptation and climate resilience. So we have from one side oil and gas producers countries, and we have from another side the resources constrained countries. So the oil-dependent economies may focus in our region, their NDCs, on diversifying their energy mix and reduce relying on fossil fuels. From other side, we have the resources constrained countries. They may emphasize their sustainable development and resilience in agriculture and water management. So water scarcity is an issue for our region. So countries in the MENA region are adopting ambitious renewable energy targets, and they are at various stages in developing and implementing their NDCs. I have taken some notes for this session, talking about the targets of our countries. Like, for example, I can talk about Egypt. They have by 20 to 25% they aim to reduce their emissions by 25% by 2030. It's ambitious. So we have Morocco, that aims for 45 reducing greenhouse gases emission by 2030. Also, we have countries like Saudi Arabia. Ahmed, I guess he gave some feedback. Tunisia, for example, they intend to reducing by 41% their emissions by 2030. And also from the other side, renewable energy, the target for renewable energy equivalent as well. But what I mentioned and we have also Algeria, energy producer, their emissions are 22% by 2030. But what is noticed for all these countries is that are linking their NDCs to technology transfer and investments and funds. So these are the main issues in our region. So we can tell that these are very ambitious targets for our region, but still linked to the capacity building in our region, technology transfer, funds. So all these issues are rising today, and we need to work before talking about the regional. These are the national ambitions. Before talking about the international or the regional cooperation, let's start with these to support these countries, because all their objectives and targets are national targets.
That's very interesting to hear. I'm going to, it's also very interesting to hear because this morning, for instance, we had a panel on specifically the collaboration around the Mediterranean, right? With Europe and yes. North America, and close East, how to say it? Near East. And here it's about regional collaboration. So the question is still, how do we also make this link to the national national part, but also
True.
from national to regional part. And here, I think I'm going to turn to you, Hajar, because you have worked very much in the region and also very often looking at what are the barriers and also more from a civil society side. So I would be really keen to hear your perspective on this and also your perspective on how the national realities needs or does not need to be interlinked in regional strategies.
For me, the question, yeah.
So for Hajar.
When I use this one, thank you.
It's not.
Okay. I am heard well. Well, there is a very good package. Thank you so much. There is a good package of barriers, if you may say, starting by policy frameworks. Fine.
Yes, it's good. It's good.
It's good. We have policy and regulatory frameworks. We know that all the nationals have obviously some regulations regarding renewable energy, but they are inconsistent in terms of to fill out all the need, starting by the renewable energy integration within the grids. And if we may say, if we want to reach out to these ambitious targets and respond to what Antonella was mentioning in terms of demand, we need electrification. And we need really to meet this demand with not just national supply, but decentralized supply and private offtakes and private industrialization supply. So to meet all of this is really a component which is missing in so many countries. Some of the countries starting developing it, but it's a big gap to fill. Another one, and of course, it has been said in the previous panel, the alignment in terms of policies. And when we look at it from the NDC's perspectives, we can see that for each national, there is a lack of interministerial coordination for the NDCs. And beyond the national level, there is lack of coordination between national and sub-national level. So that's one it seems not very important in our discussions, but within the national level and the regulators, it is a real struggle. It is a daily struggle to overcome. Another one, two other ones that are very important, which is the project implementations timelines. We need to create the homogeneous ecosystem for the private sector to invest. Investors are not in a comfortable place in our countries because in so many, not all of them, so many countries, they lack visibility on that time frame. They don't know where they are going to land those projects, starting, beginning, and ending. And another one, in that some countries are suffering very hardly, one of the most ambitious as well, is the currency risk. All the deals and are done on dollars or euros. And then the off-taker is dealing with the local currency and the consumer is dealing with local currency. And right, because it is unstable in so many times, it creates the price is not viable anymore. Donc the PPAs doesn't make sense as they used to make or was supposed to make to respond to that delay. Plus, bien sûr, the outdated grids. We have the problem of outdated grids that's still to be upgraded by any chance or by any time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing this. Gloria, I saw you nodding, and I would like to, so maybe you directly respond, and just a follow-up question to you also, do you also observe this reality that the countries in your region need to first be accompanied individually without thinking regional?
Well, yeah, it's I was nodding because two things. First, I think that the structural changes must also overcome the challenges we faced in the sector. Such a need, obviously, a greater infrastructure, adequate financing, and integration the cutting edge technologies also.
All of the countries that we have in the Latin American and the Caribbean region also face critical barriers of social economic inequality, and also outdated regulatory frameworks, and the lack of access in energy in rural areas, for example, which must be addressed to ensure an inclusive and equitable transition. It's important to mention there is no just one single path into energy transition. I think the progress depends on the realities of each country. Also, I just want to point it that from OLADE, we notice that synergy that we need for the public and private sector. And last year, in 2023, on our Wind Energy Week, we sit down in the same table to the ministries of energy and the private sector. So we have this ministerial decision to call a business council. And 2 weeks before that I've been here, we have our Energy Week to 2024. And also we have the second business council right there. And I think it's very good to know that private and public sector can sit down and talk about it, as she says. And this dialogue was a space of reflection and for agreements in which strategies they have to be defined, or the energy developments to respond to this region demands. And I think one of these was help in the capacity of the response to climate change also. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I wanted to mention that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. I'm going to turn to you, Abdallah, actually. Ahmed, sorry. Ahmed, excuse me. And ask you, in the region, I mean, we heard the different structural transformation that are required. Now in Middle East, the reality is today we have fossil fuel producing, exporting countries. This means a contribution to GDP. How do you see that the NDCs, renewable energy and energy efficiency, can also help to create new economies and phase out fossil fuel? There is obviously tension, but probably also opportunities.
No, this is really, really very important question. Thank you for answering. But I want also to have a follow-up to Antonella's point with regards to the to demand. I think this is really regionally specific. For example, what we noticed in our region is the population increase, right? And that is very linked to the consumption increase and demand increase. Yeah, but I think what we need to decrease is the consumption per capita. I think I agree with that. But the trend in our region, Saudi Arabia and many other countries in the MENA region, is that there is a population increase, which indicates that governments and private sectors need to work in terms of meeting the future growth in demand of electricity and energy products. So this is very important, very critical, and it's also linked to other points that were also raised: the socioeconomic impact and affects the infrastructure as well. So we need also to ensure that the infrastructure that we have is climate resilient, of course, but also is can at least adapt with the changing climates and changing demand. So with increasing demand, are we, and not only this, and I will come back to the question from this point, with the increasing share of renewable energy. So we also need to ensure that our infrastructure in the region, especially that our region is very vulnerable to climate change. And what's vulnerable to climate change, also our energy system are very vulnerable to climate change. We tend sometimes to look into the impacts of energy system to the climate change. And this is really, really like nobody disagree with that. But also, what are the climate impacts on the energy system itself? Because this is this is very linked to the economic development, to sustainable development in general, and it's very linked to the future generations as well. I hope that answers your questions in this regard, but
my answer would be let's stop climate change and phase out fossil fuel. But that's maybe a shortcut.
So yeah, I have different view with this regards, because to technically,
I was specifically
so technically, I believe that the main objective of renewable energy and energy efficiency is to mitigate emissions, to fight climate change, and to meet the future demand, especially in countries that have booming population. And not only this, I forget to mention that many of our economies are becoming industrial economies. It's like energy is like increasing. And this is, I think, our right in the region to develop. We're not developed, we're developing.
Sure.
And most of our countries is least developed as well. So I think at the same time, increasing share of renewables that will allow, and the need of the firm dispatchable sources of energy and thermal ones. So that comes the importance of, for example, carbon capture for natural gas power plants to ensure the reliability and the stability of the grid, which is the infrastructure itself that we need also to care about.
Antonella, I see you moving on your seat, please.
Well, I had to think about who was that said the Stone Age didn't end because of lack of stones. Or Einstein saying that there are two things that are infinite. One is the universe and one is human stupidity, and he's not sure about the universe. So I think that when we talk energy, we need to understand energy. So some basics. If we would remove combustion engines and have direct electrification, automatically we would save 60% of primary energy demand. 60%, it's a lot. So every time we think about converting, what is left is less, and less. However, the impacts are massive, because whenever we build something somewhere, we have an impact on nature and we have an impact on people. So efficiency, we need to look not at appliance level, but at system level. And I think that this place is very good for talking, but very bad for understanding what the actions need to be. And the actions have to be rooted in expert knowledge, in data. Otherwise, it's just a talking shop. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella. So we're almost running out. So we're running out of time. But Hajar, you had also a quick comment, very quick.
Quick comment. Yes, in the MENA region, we are facing growing urbanization, growing population, and growing industrialization. But there is this vision also of the new energy system, either in Emirates, Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf, in also Azerbaijan and so on now, to go through the pathway of Norway, like developing most of the renewable energy locally, use it and leave and export all the fossil fuels. So even though I used to be before quite skeptic about this vision, now it looks to me, okay, if everyone's develop self-sufficiency, 100% supply nationally, we will point out who's demanding that fossil energy, and we work towards him to really diminish the demand. So this is a thought that I really have been thinking about lately. So we may be encouraging very nationals to go 100% renewables, And we will see who's going to need that more any fossil fuels any further in the coming years, maybe.
I think that's also something, I think you make a really important point when we see all the regulatory frameworks today on the fossil fuel importing countries and how the demand is actually going, when we're looking at the industrialized countries, going to reduce. This is, I think, what we heard from Colombia, that they take this into account as a future risk. And this is one of the reasons why they're actually moving from fossil fuel to renewable energy efficiency strategy, I think, and building up new economic industrial opportunities. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Do you have a question? You look like having a question. No, or there's. Okay, if that's, you know what, I could see on your face that you really had an urgent question, so I give you, but very quick.
Thank you. So I'm actually Satanai and from SYFC and Youth-led NGO, and we are discussing like that there's no really direct negotiation track on the topic of energy. So when you talked about technology transfer, what made me think is that what should be the process for that? Like we need to have also a kind of a NDC for the enabling the technology transfer from developed countries to developing countries. What should be the process? Also about energy, we always talk about that there's no really quantified metrics to try to track the how much we achieved in terms of renewable energy targets, etc. So could you maybe, I'm not sure if I was clear enough. I'm sorry for that. I was a bit excited. I wasn't expecting to ask a question, but if I'm clear, maybe can you elaborate a bit what you mean by how to track the transfer of technology?
And that's actually perfect because it's for you, Nadia, and I know that I thought like, how can I give you the word again? But here we have.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but I would prefer to avoid her question because, I have been working in international cooperation for more than 15 years. And actually, when we talk about technology transfer or in collaboration or in partnership, it's a question that I try always to avoid because there are no technology transfer. No technology transfer, because of course, when we are collaborating, when we are partnering, so there is a business behind. There is a promotion of something behind. There is always something to sell or to hire, so this is not real partnership. If we want really, and this is a concept that we really need to cooperate. We really need, because we are all concerned. This is what if I had to the last word, I would mention like capacity building and technology transfer. This is the most important things if we are talking about, because it's not about resources it's about capacity building and technology transfer. I'm sorry to say that we don't have now in the different programs of cooperation, in different programs, we have always somehow something behind. So yes, we need to maybe to revisit this concept. We need to think out of the box. When you are discussing cooperation and partnership, you need to focus on how you elaborate this technology transfer, how it works. So I'm sorry, maybe I haven't answered your question, but this is the fact and this is the reality. Yeah.
So I am very sorry, Ahmed. We need to because they came over. But what I noticed is on the two ladies on the right are really questioning very fundamental beliefs we need to change.
Yes.
And I think it is time to do so and open up the spaces for doing so.
It starts from there, by the way.
So, sorry? Yes. Excellent. So let's collectively change towards a better world and better concepts. I would like to thank all of you for the discussions and for the patience in the audience here and being with us until 8 p.m. So thanks a lot, and please join me Thank you very much. We'll continue those discussions online and in future events, and I look forward to this.